If these structures were to appear in the modern world, they would be regarded as marvels of engineering. Yet they lie deep in the past, like fractures between layers of time, concealed beneath the dust clouds of history. And the most unsettling thing, the detail that continues to puzzle researchers, is that some of them possess structures that seem to have appeared far earlier than the history we know should allow. So who built them, when history itself had not yet learned its own name? Not in a desert, not deep within a forest, but resting silently beneath 25 meters of seawater, where light nearly disappears and time itself seems frozen. Yonaguni feels like a straight plunge into the depths of the ocean. The story began in 1986, when diver Kihachiro Aratake, while searching for a location to observe hammerhead sharks, accidentally discovered a massive stone structure. At first, it did not resemble any coral reef. There were unusually broad, flat surfaces, clearly terraced stair-like formations, nearly perfect angles, and corridors that appeared to be intentional passageways. In an environment where nature typically creates curves, this remarkable straightness became the most unusual feature of all. As information spread, Yonaguni quickly became one of the most divisive archaeological debates in the modern world. One side saw evidence of geology. Sandstone fractured along natural layers, shaped by ocean waves and earthquakes over thousands of years. The other side saw something entirely different. A structure with order, design, and signs of human intervention. Marine archaeologist Masaki Kimura of Ryukyus University, who spent decades diving and studying the site, offered the most controversial view. I can state with certainty that these formations were not created by nature. There is too much evidence of human influence, from carving marks to what appears to be a surrounding road system. During his surveys, Kimura documented structures he described as a stone gate, a main staircase, and flat surfaces resembling the foundations of a large complex. To him, these are the remnants of architecture erased by time and the sea. But science has never stood entirely on one side. Geologist Robert Schoch of Boston University presented the opposing argument. The stair-like formations and flat surfaces are not the fingerprints of human builders, but the misunderstood language of geology. Even so, certain symmetrical forms, angles approaching a precise 90 degrees, and the repeated pattern of flat surfaces prevent many researchers from completely dismissing the possibility of an artificial origin. If this truly is a human-made structure, then when was it built? Geological estimates suggest that if the formation once stood above sea level, it would date to a period when ocean levels were lower following the last ice age, more than 10,000 years ago. Yet according to conventional history, humanity had not yet entered an age of urbanization or large-scale architecture. In the folklore of the Ryukyu Islands, there are legends of sunken lands and worlds beneath the sea, places where human memory blends mythology with fragments of forgotten history. Though not scientific evidence, these stories persist as a layer of distant memory, as if people long ago sensed that something existed beneath these waters. It is precisely this contradiction that makes Yonaguni such a fascinating point of convergence. It may be a natural geological formation, or it may be the remains of a submerged civilization. To this day, neither side possesses enough evidence to reach an absolute conclusion. And so Yonaguni opens an even larger question. If structures like this truly exist beneath the seas of Japan, then before civilization entered the historical record, how far had ancient humanity really gone? Göbekli Tepe, a seemingly harmless earthen hill. The surface could not be more different, dry, scorching, and unsettlingly silent. It stands on the Hiden Plateau, near the Syrian border in southeastern Turkey. In 1994, German archaeologist Klaus Schmidt began excavating the site, and after only the first layers of earth were removed, he reached a conclusion that shocked the academic world. This is not a settlement, this is a temple. That seemingly simple statement carried enough weight to challenge everything we thought we knew about the origins of civilization. Beneath the soil, archaeologists uncovered dozens of massive T-shaped limestone pillars. Standing as high as 5 to 6 meters and weighing between 10 and 20 tons, they were arranged in concentric circles, like a ceremonial map frozen in time. Carved across their surfaces were images of animals, lions, foxes, snakes, wild cattle, not random illustrations, but a symbolic system with recurring patterns, as though it were telling a story that we have not yet learned how to read. What astonished the world most was when it existed. Carbon isotope analysis dates Göbekli Tepe to approximately 11,500 to 12,000 years ago. According to the German Archaeological Institute, it belongs to the pre-pottery Neolithic period. In other words, it is a structure that should not exist according to conventional historical logic. Yet it does. Klaus Schmidt once compared the discovery to a startling image. Finding Göbekli Tepe is like finding a smartphone inside the tomb of a pharaoh. And this is where history turns upside down. For decades, the accepted model of social evolution was taught as a linear sequence. Agriculture emerged, humans settled down, complex societies formed. And only afterward did they build temples and organized religions. Archaeologist Ian Hodder of Stanford University suggested a different possibility, that belief and ritual may have been the force that brought people together, compelling them to cooperate on a large scale, and that agriculture emerged afterward as a consequence of supporting these ritual communities. The animal imagery carved into the pillars may be more than decoration. Some researchers argue that it represents an early symbolic system, perhaps an incomplete form of symbolic language. Even more unusual is the absence of evidence for ordinary daily life. Everything appears centered around ritual activity. In local tradition, the site was once known as the Hill of the Giants, a place where ancient beings communicated with the divine world before a great catastrophe erased humanity's memory. And the climax of the mystery lies in the final act of those who built it. Around 8000 BCE, after more than a millennium of use, the entirety of Göbekli Tepe was deliberately buried. And if Göbekli Tepe is enough to overturn everything we think we understand about the beginning of civilization, then the next question becomes impossible to avoid. If humans had already reached such a level of organization more than 11,000 years ago, why did they then lose that very capability for thousands of years afterward? Leaving the Hiden Plateau of Göbekli Tepe behind, we travel farther south to the Ellora Cave Complex in Maharashtra, India. There, among dozens of Buddhist, Hindu, and Jain caves, stands a structure that seems to force architectural logic itself to stop and reconsider. A monument carved directly into a mountain of stone where every mistake would have been irreversible. The Kailasa Temple. At first glance, it appears to be an ordinary temple, complete with columns, corridors, divine sculptures, and an open courtyard. But once you understand how it was created, that sense of familiarity vanishes entirely, because Kailasa was not built from the bottom upward. It was carved from the top downward. The entire structure was sculpted directly from the summit of a single massive block of basalt, with workers gradually excavating deeper and deeper until the form of the temple emerged, without assembling stones, constructing walls, or stacking layers. There was only a mountain, and the controlled disappearance of more than 200,000 tons of rock. According to surveys conducted by the Archaeological Survey of India, it is one of the largest monolithic stone structures ever created by human hands. Archaeologist M.K. Devalekar once emphasized the near absolute nature of this precision. The Kailasa Temple is a complete engineering marvel. A single mistaken cut made by a worker during those first days at the mountaintop could have turned a project worth decades of labor into a discarded ruin. That is precisely what makes Kailasa an engineering paradox. The larger the structure, the less room there was for error. How could a group of 8th century craftsmen see an entire temple hidden inside a solid mass of rock that had never been opened? According to traditional chronicles, the monument was commissioned during the reign of King Krishna I of the Rashtrakuta dynasty around the 8th century. Some folk accounts preserve a more spiritual version of the story, recorded in the text Katha Kalpataru. A queen prayed to Shiva to save the king and vowed to build a temple in the deity's honor if her prayer was answered. In the legend, the architect Kokasa proposed an almost unimaginable idea. Instead of building upward like every other structure, he reversed the logic itself and carved downward from the top. Some folk traditions go even further, speaking of divine intervention and claiming that the project was completed with the aid of an astra, a sacred weapon capable of softening stone. Even if the mythological elements are removed, the engineering challenge remains and becomes even more difficult. Modern estimates suggest that removing 200,000 tons of rock within roughly 18 to 20 years through purely manual methods would have required an almost continuous pace of excavation. With the crude iron tools available at the time, this level of productivity has led many modern engineers to question the scale and sophistication of ancient labor organization. Kailasa also becomes dangerous in a different way. It forces us to rethink not the tools, but the design process itself. How clearly did its creators envision this monument before making the very first strike into the stone? If Kailasa stands as evidence that humans could literally carve architecture from a mountain, then the next question becomes even harder to believe. If they could accomplish this on solid land, then when faced with enormous isolated stone blocks elsewhere, what else were they capable of doing? Leaving the Ellora caves in India, the story continues across the ocean, across the South American continent, and up toward a high plateau that almost seems to touch the sky, the Tiwanaku region of Bolivia. At more than 3,800 meters above sea level, the thin air, cold winds, and harsh sunlight create a landscape so severe that the very presence of human life here is already a question. Yet at the center of that setting lies a ruin that left archaeologists silent for decades: Puma Punku. From the moment one steps into the excavation area, the first thing that confuses many people is not the feeling of an ancient site, but the sensation of standing inside a shattered workshop of components. Blocks of andesite and diorite lie scattered across the ground, yet their shapes do not look natural. They resemble technical modules dismantled from some colossal machine. Most remarkable are the H-blocks, cut with almost perfectly right angles, razor-straight edges, symmetrical grooves, and drill holes of equal depth, as if measured with precision instruments. When a square ruler is placed against their surfaces, in many cases, there is no significant gap. Touching the stone does not feel like touching raw rock, but rather an industrial material that has already been processed. Archaeologist Alexei Vranich of the University of California, Berkeley, who once reconstructed Puma Punku using 3D technology, observed, "When you look at the grooves and mortise holes in the stones of Puma Punku, you immediately think of technical drawings. The precision of these flat surfaces and right angles reaches a level that is difficult to believe could have been achieved without refined measuring tools or mechanical cutting machines." But according to archaeological evidence, they did not possess iron or steel, let alone tools hard enough to cut diorite, one of the hardest stones in the Andes. The main tools that have been found are only bronze, cobblestones, and primitive grinding implements. How could an ultra-hard material be cut with almost CNC-like precision, using tools far softer than the stone itself? Some scientific hypotheses try to explain this through prolonged abrasion techniques, using quartz sand, water, and friction over a very long period of time to shape the stone. Others suggest that this was a technique repeated across many generations, where precision accumulated gradually over time. However, when modern engineers attempt to recreate it, They realized that the issue is not whether it can be done, but time and consistency. Producing one precise block may be possible, but repeating hundreds of blocks with extremely low margins of error is a different story. Archaeologist Arthur Poznansky once described the Tiwanaku area as an architecture that goes far beyond any simple explanation of the era to which it belongs. What is especially notable is that the stone blocks are also modular. Many of them could fit together in repeated structures, like a standardized building system. In the legends of the Aymara people and Andean cultures, Tiwanaku and Puma Punku are regarded as places where creator gods once appeared after an ancient great flood. The god Viracocha is said to have created humans here, then departed across the ocean, leaving these structures behind as traces of an age of origins. Modern science, however, is more cautious. Studies identify Puma Punku as part of the Tiwanaku civilization, which flourished around 500 to 1000 AD. This was an organized society with advanced construction techniques in the Andes region, as well as notable abilities in stone transportation and spatial planning. Yet Puma Punku is still not the peak of the paradox. Because if ancient humans could create stone structures with such astonishing precision on the South American continent, then the next question no longer belongs on land. It lies in the middle of the ocean, where a city was not only built from stone, but built as if the sea itself had once been turned into an architectural foundation. And that is when we move into the next mystery. Nan Madol did not only require precisely cut stone, it also required transporting, assembling, and building an entire city on the surface of the open sea, where every small mistake would be swallowed by the ocean. From the very first aerial view, Nan Madol does not look like any other ancient ruin. It resembles an architectural blueprint drawn directly onto the sea. More than 90 small artificial islets created from millions of stacked basalt blocks, connected by a network of water canals like a geometric maze. That is why it is often called the Venice of the Pacific, but even that comparison is not enough to describe how impossible it feels. The stone walls here rise several meters high, formed from natural prism-shaped basalt blocks stacked in a log cabin style, with no clear binding mortar. The total weight of the stone has been estimated at hundreds of thousands of tons. Archaeologist Rufino Mauricio, who spent many years studying Pompeii, once described the initial helplessness of standing before this structure. The first question is not what they built it for, but how they brought these stones here. There is no quarry on site. The nearest stone source lies dozens of kilometers away, across dense jungle and dangerous swamp. This is exactly what makes Nan Madol completely different from Puma Punku. If Puma Punku shocks us with the precision of stone-cutting technology, then Nan Madol shocks us with the impossibility of transport and installation. Imagine this, a basalt block weighing several tons. To bring it to the exact right position, ancient people would have had to control buoyancy, tides, and balance on the surface of the water. And with only a slight error, the stone would sink forever. Because of this, Nan Madol has long stood at the center of supernatural legends in Pohnpeian culture. Indigenous people tell of two brothers, Oloso Hapa and Oloso Hapa, sorcerers with the ability to move stone through special powers. Some legends even say they flew through the air, or used an invisible force to move stones from distant islands to their present location, then stacked them into a sacred city. But what is remarkable is this: even ancient indigenous people did not see Nan Madol as a normal construction. In collective memory, it has always stood on the boundary between the human world and the sacred world. Modern archaeological studies, especially from UNESCO and the Smithsonian Institution, suggest that Nan Madol was built between the 12th and 17th centuries under the influence of the Sodalur civilization. It once served as the political, religious, and ceremonial center of the region, a kind of ritual capital in the middle of the ocean. But even if we accept that, a major gap still remains. The scale of labor organization and transportation techniques has still not been fully explained. Some scientific hypotheses propose a model using wooden rafts combined with tides to pull stones into the canals. When the tide rose, the stones could float and move. When the tide receded, they could be positioned and stacked into the structure. And just when we think there could be no place on Earth more difficult to understand, the chain of mysteries climbs to an even more terrifying level. No longer hundreds of thousands of tons of stone on the sea, but single stone blocks weighing as much as an entire train, moved as if gravity were no longer a limit. Located in Lebanon's Bka Valley, a dry and quiet landscape that seems, at first glance, entirely unremarkable. Yet beneath that ground lies one of the most controversial mysteries in archaeology. Baalbek, a place where stone blocks no longer belong to the world of easily explained things. From the very first moment of entering the temple complex, the most shocking sight is not the Roman architecture above, but the foundation beneath it, where three colossal stone blocks known as the trilithon rest side by side, as if they had been placed by a tireless force. Each block measures more than 20 meters in length and weighs approximately 800 to 1,000 tons. And if the trilithon alone is enough to overwhelm intuition, then not far away, in the quarry, lies something that has left scientists silent for even longer. The unfinished stone known as Hajar al-Hibla, the stone of the pregnant woman, estimated to weigh between 1,200 and more than 1,600 tons. According to the German Archaeological Institute, it is one of the largest single stone blocks ever quarried in human history, yet it was never completely transported. French archaeologist Jean-Pierre Adam stated plainly, Baalbek is a monument that challenges every limit of ancient mechanical engineering. Even with the most powerful modern cranes available today, lifting a stone block weighing more than 1,000 tons remains an extraordinarily complex logistical problem. What makes Baalbek even stranger is the apparent mismatch between the architecture and the foundation. The temple structures above, especially the Temple of Jupiter, display unmistakably Roman characteristics, columns, layout, and proportions. But deeper excavations reveal foundations that seem to belong to an entirely different era. From this emerges a hypothesis that repeatedly appears in academic debate. The Romans may not have been the first people to work at this site, but rather builders who constructed upon a much older foundation. Alongside science, legend opens an entirely different layer of explanation. The ancient Phoenicians called this place Heliopolis, the city of the sun. In folk memory, Baalbek did not belong to ordinary humans. One story claims that it was built by giant beings known as the Nephilim, creatures capable of lifting stone as easily as sand and constructing monuments through sheer will. Other traditions speak of Eastern gods who used supernatural power to lay a foundation connecting Earth to the heavens. Researchers from the German Archaeological Institute, DAI, and numerous other archaeological teams have proposed more practical mechanisms. Systems of wooden rollers, earthen ramps, pulleys, and coordinated human pulling force. Under this model, the stones were not lifted, but rather slid into place through an extraordinarily slow process that may have taken months or even years for each individual block. When Baalbek is placed beside Nan Madol, the city rising from the ocean, a repeating pattern begins to emerge. Humans were not simply building structures. They were pushing the limits of physical reality to extremes. And if we continue following this chain, from Göbekli Tepe to Kailasa, Puma Punku, Nan Madol, and finally Baalbek, it becomes increasingly clear that ancient civilizations did not develop in the linear way we once imagined. Giza, the pyramid, where the mystery no longer lies in the stone blocks themselves, but in the very purpose of its existence. According to the Egyptian Ministry of Tourism and Antiquities, the pyramid originally stood about 146 meters tall and was constructed from more than 2.3 million stone blocks, each weighing on average between 2 and 15 tons. Yet this enormous number is not what has kept scientists silent the longest. The faces of the pyramid are aligned almost perfectly with the 4 cardinal directions, with only an extremely small margin of error. Archaeologist Flinders Petrie, who laid the foundation for modern scientific surveying at Giza, once remarked, "We are standing before a level of precision that even modern engineers must work hard to reproduce." But Giza does not shock only on the surface. When modern science began to see through stone, the real mysteries started to emerge. The Scan Pyramids project, using muon tomography, a technique that analyzes cosmic particles passing through matter, discovered a large void approximately 30 meters long above the Grand Gallery. The discovery was published in Nature and immediately sparked a wave of global debate. What matters is not the hypothesis of a secret chamber or a hidden treasure, but a simple and uncomfortable reality. We still do not understand the internal structure of one of the most famous monuments in the world. Archaeologist Zahi Hawass once said, "The Great Pyramid is like a gigantic stone computer. The more advanced technology we use to scan deep inside it, the more we realize how little we truly know about the real capabilities of the ancient Egyptians." Meanwhile, ancient Egyptian texts do not describe the pyramid as merely a burial structure. Some later religious texts suggest that it was a place where the pharaoh's soul ascended to the sky, a structure intended to connect humanity with the order of the cosmos. When this idea is placed alongside the monument's astronomical precision, another layer of meaning begins to appear. The pyramid does not simply stand upon the earth, it is positioned according to the heavens. And it is precisely that scale of organization that places Giza beyond all the other monuments. If Baalbek is a problem of weight, Puma Punku a problem of precision, and Nan Madol a problem of logistics at sea, then Giza is the combined problem, solving all of those challenges simultaneously within a single system. More than 2 million stone blocks were cut, transported, and assembled with extremely low margins of error in an age without heavy transport wheels, lifting machines, or modern steel. Although science has proposed reasonable models, a gap still remains between "it could be done" and "it was accomplished on that scale." Looking back across the entire journey, a strange pattern emerges: ancient humans, living in completely different geographic regions, repeatedly created structures that exceeded the ordinary limits of their own eras. This leads to a question that is not easy to answer. Are we witnessing the linear development of history? Or are we merely looking at fragments of a capability that once existed but has never been properly understood? Each of these structures once led the world to believe that they should not have existed in their own time. Yet the more deeply they are studied, the more science reveals that the most extraordinary thing is not lost technology or mysterious legends, but the remarkable capabilities of ancient humans themselves. And perhaps that is the greatest lesson of this journey. Sometimes the mystery does not lie within the ancient monuments themselves, but in how greatly we have underestimated our ancestors. Thank you for staying with WUFO Space until the very end of this journey through the vast universe. If you found this video interesting and insightful, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe to WUFO Space so you won't miss our next cosmic adventures. Your support means the world to us and fuels our passion to keep exploring the wonders beyond.